President Bola Tinubu has made sweeping changes to the leadership of the Central Bank of Nigeria, nominating Dr. Yemi Michael Cardoso as the new governor. The president's decision, in line with the Central Bank of Nigeria Act of 2007, comes with the nomination of 4 deputy governors, including Nana Usoro, Mohammed Sani Abdullahi Datijo, Mr. Philip Ikazo, and Dr. Bala M. Bello. Now, these nominations for a term of 5 years at the first instance are now pending confirmation by the Nigerian Senate. On June 9, 2023, President Tinubu ordered the suspension of the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Godwin Emefiele.
Meanwhile, Yemi Michael Cardoso is a Nigerian banker, chartered stockbroker, a public policy maker, and a financial and development expert with over 30 years' experience in the private, public, and of course, non-profit sectors. Yemi Cardoso is a graduate of Managerial and Administrative Studies at Aston University, UK, and holds a master's degree in public administration from the Harvard Kennedy School. He started his banking career with Citibank Nigeria, eventually rising to the position of vice president. He co-founded Citizens International Bank, where he served as an executive director. Cardoso later served as the chairman of the board of directors at Citibank Nigeria.
Well, he was the Lagos State Commissioner for Economic Planning and Budget under the Tinubu administration. There, he served with the current Minister of Finance and coordinating Minister of the Economy, Wale Edun. Yemi Cardoso is the founder of and co-chair of Eminently Summit, the Lagos State Economic Conference. He's a member of the advisory board of the Lagos Business School and chairman of the board of the African Venture Philanthropy Alliance. Right, let's bring in Arise Exchange. And of course, he's the anchor of Arise Exchange, Boason Omofaye, who is in Lagos. Boason, good to see you. There's no better person to help us, tell us who exactly Yemi Cardoso is. What about his resume that we've just read that prepares him to be the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, of course?
Well, thank you, Ngozi, and thank you, everyone. I think the Yemi Cardoso comes well qualified to be nominated as the central bank governor. As you read in, and my colleague read in that part of his resume, he's well educated. He's worked with a couple of local and international banking institutions. He's a chartered stockbroker. You understand development economics in a manner of speaking, and he is engaged in the private and public sector. I'm sure you also understand investment, securities, banking, and financial services, broadly speaking. So he comes in qualified to be nominated as a central bank governor at this point in time. Ngozi.
Well, one would say with that resume is well prepared, as you've just told us. Well, at this situation, with the situation on the ground in Nigeria, looking at the downturn of the economic situation, inflation, living standard dropping, and all of that, looks like the gentleman has his job cut out for him. So what should we be expecting from a man like that if he does get approved as the CBN governor?
I like that question, and that is where the next conversation really goes. Again, I think Mr. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is being very careful and strategic in terms of who he brings in. The central bank governor won't be working in isolation. He's be working very closely with the Minister of Finance and the coordinating Minister of the Economy, who is Wale Edun. Of course, they are jolly good fellows in Lagos State. They are both investment bankers. They've known themselves for many years. Both of them had served in President Bola Ahmed Tinubu when he was the governor of Lagos State. So these were inner men of Mr. President that is bringing those who understand economy, budget, national planning to come and bring their knowledge into the revamping of Nigeria's economy, talking about revenue as well. Now, if you look at the table, it looks like the three pillars that you need for an economy that needs revenue and need to get going, they are all coming into play. The jigsaw puzzle is coming together. You have a new acting chairman of the Federal Inland Revenue Service, Zaccheaus Adedeji, who was brought on board just about 48 hours ago by Mr. President as well. So if we are talking revenue, you've got the man in place. If you're talking finance and coordinating the economy, you've got Wale Edun there. So the tripod, in a manner of speaking, seem to be standing right now if the Senate goes ahead and approve Dr. Yemi Cardoso as the next central bank governor. Now, understand very well that Wale Edun himself, who is in charge of finance, is an investment banker, is a licensed and chartered stockbroker. He also understands finance at the back of his hands. He also understands investment banking. So between Wale Edun and Yemi Cardoso, I think you have a pair here that can work together. Now, this is completely different from what we have during the Buhari's administration, in which Godwin Emefiele, the central bank governor, who is a banker, and President Buhari had about 2 or 3 different finance ministers who were technically, in the manner of speaking, not on the same page with the central bank in the manner of speaking. So I think that the president has been very careful as to who he chose to be at the central bank, who is going to be in the finance and who is going to be in charge of revenue for the country. These are the 3 critical pillars that the country needs to rest on right now. And the earlier we have Cardoso in place, if the Senate says so, they are the parliament, they have the right to decide with those deputy governors, the earlier he needs to hit the ground running. Now, his job is cut out for him, not an easy job and not an enviable one. We have a Naira that is currently underwater as we speak. It needs to speak to that. Foreign exchange market really needs to be revamped. We need liquidity in the market. So between Cardoso, Adedeji at the FRS and Wale Edun, I hope they will be able to move with Mr. President and prove to be that cabinet, that team, the economic and financial and banking and financial services cabinet, inner part of the cabinet that will help drive the agenda of Mr. President. You need to get the economy up and running. We need both portfolio and foreign direct investment. We need to source money from outside. We need to do privatization of state-owned entities in Nigeria. We need people who understand the international language. And out of these 3 men, as of today, the 3 of them seem qualified to be in that position based on their antecedents. And I think Mr. President will make good use of them. I think they are very strategic, and this position right now seems to have locked it all in for Mr. President.
Boason, President Tinubu expects critical reforms at the Central Bank of Nigeria. What kind of reforms do you expect the new man on the block, to come up with?
Well, this looks like a very sweeping changes. He is also nominating 4 new deputy governors of the central bank. Well, there are still deputy governors serving at the central bank as at this evening. I'm not aware if they existed. Those deputy governors have resigned or have left the office. That is an issue to still be decided. We'll be talking about this. Analysts and economists and others will be swarming over this latest development over the weekend. But I'm seeing right now that the Senate would have to hit the ground running very quickly to clear the nominees of Mr. President to get into office. That means you're doing a whole cleaning at the top echelon of the Central Bank of Nigeria in a manner of speaking. But it's not the Central Bank alone you need to clean up. You need to clean up the economy as a whole. So the work on ground for Yemi Cardoso, Wale Edun, and the rest of them is not an easy one at this point in time. The Mr. President has an unenviable job. He says he wants to be president. He's got 200 million people. He has an economy that is growing suboptimally below population growth and below a few other countries' average. So we need to deal with that. The external vulnerabilities and headwinds for the economy is not good. Inflation everywhere in the world, rising interest rate. You have to deal with local issues as well. There's food security to deal with. There's insecurity of life and property has to deal with. This team will have to help Mr. President find industrialization, find manufacturing, find growth, productivity. They will have to help him find the money, both locally and abroad, brought to do all that Mr. President wants to do. They need to help him chart the path to spend very judiciously the hundreds of billions and trillions that will be clawed back from fuel subsidy removal. All of that had to happen. He has made pronouncements, Mr. President, by removing fuel subsidy and go for the unification of central bank exchange rates. These men will have to hit the ground to ensure that they walk the talk. In other words, they need to ensure the soft landing for ordinary Nigerians and help industries, manufacturers, and those who are doing trade and services get the better part of this policy pronouncement by Mr. President. Mr. President has spoken. The oracle has spoken. Now he needs the men on the ground who will put flesh on the bone that he has put on the table. And that's why I think Cardoso, Wale Edun, and Zaccheaus Adedeji at the FRS do come in.
Right. So we'll quickly wrap this up with you so we can move on. What about our foreign reserves? What are the suggestions you have for him to boost our foreign reserves and also strengthen the Naira?
Well, I just spoke about it. We need to do productivity, and productivity. We need to be productive at the federal, states, and local government level until we can hit the ground around productivity, both in agriculture, agro-allied, low-hanging fruits for the country. Then we move up to semi-finished goods in terms of value additions so that we can ramp up on exports. Those are low-hanging fruits we've been talking about for so many years. We have so many agencies, we have so many interventions on the ground. Mr. President has just come back from his economic diplomacy around the world. The vice president is also out right now, also doing the same thing, ramping up investors. So these men and women who are part of the new cabinet should be able to do something very quickly. Now, the clock is ticking. Before you know it, you're talking about the end of the year. By the way, we need to start preparing for 2024 budget. This is September already, halfway down into the month, and the third quarter of the year. We need a 2024 budget. What would that look like? Which will be President Tinubu's first fiscal budget, as well as the MTF that he will put on the table. And I think this team need to work together. The lack of cohesion and cooperation that we saw under Buhari's administration should be a thing of the past. So I hope Mr. President Tinubu, now bringing his men from 1999, his term in Lagos, to run at the federal level, will have to deliver that so much that he has spoke about, that he delivered Lagos, he built Lagos, and he can do it at the federal level. So much work is on the table, and there's so much to be done by these men.
Yes, indeed, Boason, Omofaye. Thank you so much for helping us break this down.